Thank you, Amy. That was pretty amazing. Thank you. And you guys, all of you. Oliver, it's nice to have you back. So, I've been thinking a lot about integrity lately. I don't know why it's been on my mind, but it has. And you know, integrity, it's one of those words that people are using a lot. It's kind of a buzzword. You know, it's synonymous for words like honesty and truthfulness and reliability and uprightness. And because it's kind of a buzzword, we see it in advertisements, we hear it in speeches from politicians and ministers, and you know, Facebook has gazillion quotes with it. I love Facebook. Are you guys on Facebook? You love Facebook? Okay, anyway. Everyone talks about how important it is to be in integrity. But have you ever noticed that some people talk about integrity to show how integritous they are, but they're not really living it? They're not actually being in integrity? Have you ever noticed that? I love this quote by Oprah. Real integrity is doing the right thing, knowing that nobody's going to know whether you did it or not. Right? And that's kind of a litmus test, isn't it? Doing the right thing, even though there's no reward for it, or you're not going to get a lot of attention or praise for it, simply doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Let me give you an example. You know, I confess a lot to you all, so this is going to be one of those confession times. I've been thinking for a while that I wanted to get a dog. You know, I have cats, George and Lucy. You've heard me talk about George and Lucy. They came all the way up from California with me, and I love them. But being an equal opportunity animal lover, I've been feeling like I kind of want to get a dog, right? Now, I've never owned a dog before, so I'm not 100% sure what's involved in having a dog. I just think that I want one, right? So I've had the opportunity in the past couple of months to actually take care of a dog off and on. And it's been very eye-opening for me to realize how much responsibility there really is. There's much less responsibility with cats. You give them food, you give them water, you clean out their cat box, we're golden, right? Give them a little pet every once in a while. Dogs are different. For instance, you gotta take dogs for a walk. And you can't just talk about it. You gotta actually do it, right? And then you gotta pick up after the dog. Let's just face it. And for years, I gotta tell you, I railed and complained about people who didn't pick up after their dogs. I mean, what's wrong with these people, right? Until I had to do it. Sometimes several times in one walk. And then I was like, oh, I get it. So here it is at 6:30 in the morning, and you're in your pajamas. And there's nobody around. You still pick up after the dog? What about when he wedges himself way back into the bushes? Do you also have to wedge yourself way back in the bushes to pick up after him? So I seriously was having to ask myself these questions, right? And for me, I will tell you that the answer is yes, most of the time. Because again, as Oprah says here, real integrity is doing the right thing, knowing that nobody is going to know whether or not you did it or not. Because the truth is, when I do something that is out of integrity, guess who knows? I know. I know. And that's what counts. In other words, being in integrity is not so that people can appreciate you or admire you for your honesty and your forthrightness. It's because I want to be true to my own nature. I want to be true to my sense of rightness, my personal code of ethics. Now, have I been 100% faithful in my code of ethics regarding the dog? Not 100%, but honestly, pretty close, pretty close. And when I don't, I feel really bad about it. Which brings me to another quote by Alan Simpson, who says, if you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. Now, I could spend the whole rest of our time together this morning talking about the importance of being in integrity. It's really, really important as we are on our spiritual path or on our earthly path with a dog. However, that isn't the only part of integrity that I want to talk about today, because in my musings about integrity this week, and you all may not know that, but I get an idea at the beginning part of the week, and I muse on it all week long, and I research and I think about it, and I pay attention to things. And what I discovered in my musing and research about the word integrity is that there are actually other definitions for the word. The one we've just talked about, right? The quality of being honest, truthfulness, reliability, uprightness. That's the one we usually think about, right? But here's another definition. Sound in construction. What we're talking about is the structural integrity of like a building or a bridge or something like that. When something is built on a solid foundation, it is said to have integrity. Well, you know, I'm going to turn that into a spiritual lesson, right? Because that's just what I do. A spiritual lesson about feeling solidly and firmly supported by the universe. Because when we understand, excuse me, don't look at that yet. Okay, when we understand how the universe works, and that's why we're here, so that we can begin to understand how the universe works, we find that we really, really can rely on it. We really, really can stand on it. We really can trust that it is here to support us no matter what, even when it doesn't look like it. So you know, I'm from California, right? Land of earthquakes. We've seen pictures, you just saw a picture, we've seen pictures of some of the devastation that has happened when big earthquakes happening in California. There's toppled buildings, there's freeways and roads that, I know, right? Scary, scary stuff. I gotta tell you, scary stuff. Yet, with every earthquake, the engineers and all the people who do the building get together and they figure out what can we do better. And so building codes and engineering improve. And structural integrity about how these things are built become more sound. And the devastation becomes less. So that the earthquakes of the past few decades, and I've lived through several of them, they're dangerous and they're scary, I will tell you, do not bring as much damage as, say, the 1906 San Francisco earthquake that basically razed the entire city. Now here's one of the major differences. And I think this is very interesting. The buildings in California used to be built very solidly. What most people would think of as being structurally sound. Until an earthquake would hit, and then that solidness would become a detriment. Because the ground would shake and rattle and roll, but the buildings were built to not move. And so they were torn apart at the foundation. Is this making sense? So now that people understand a little bit more about how all of this works, right? The buildings are actually built to have a little bit of give and take. So when an earthquake happens, the buildings, and I've been in some high-rises when this has happened, the buildings actually sway back and forth a little bit. The bridges kind of move back and forth a little bit. They stay intact, but there is a little bit of flexibility in their structure. So think about that from the standpoint of a spiritual lesson on integrity. When we're so firm, when we are so inflexible in our approach to things, the slightest rumbling of life can tear us apart. But when we understand how the universe works and we learn how to trust it, we find that we have some flexibility and some give when life begins to happen. We may be shaken, but we're not destroyed. Is this making sense? Can I get an amen?
Amen.
What happens then, when we understand how the universe works, and that's what we're working at, is that we find out that when an earthquake happens in our life, and I'm talking about an emotional or a personal earthquake happens, we understand that it's actually a necessary adjustment to make space for something greater to come through. It's heavy duty, isn't it? That's what happens with an earthquake, you understand, is that the plates are like this, and something wants to come up, and so those plates have to move. That's what makes the ground shake, so that something else can come through. The same thing is true with the personal earthquakes in our lives. Let me share with you what Ernest Holmes said. He says, if we can believe in an inner integrity, an inward security of which no man can rob us, then instead of putting on a sackcloth and ashes and spending our time lamenting, we shall anoint our heads with the oil of peace, don the robe of confidence, and wear the shoes of gladness. Now, he's not saying, and I'm not saying, that when your life goes to you know what, that you shouted from the rooftops, "Yay, my life really sucks right now." That's not what I'm talking about. But when we trust that what is happening is ultimately for our good, we can sway with it and still feel supported by the universe. Which brings me to my next definition of the word integrity. The state of being whole, complete, and undivided. The condition of being unified. Root word, help me out here, mathematicians. Integer. Is that the right word? That's the whole number, right? That's the root word of integrity. That sense of being whole and complete and undivided, that sense of unity, of being unified. That one surprised me, and actually, frankly, tickled me, because I hadn't thought about it in terms of integrity. And yet, it ties all the other definitions together, because when I am being true to myself and what I know to be right, and I am building my life on a solid yet flexible foundation, I am whole, I am complete, I am in integrity. So then we take it up to a more spiritual point of view. We got lots of new people. This is a basic of our teaching. This is a basic of our teaching. And that is that God, or whatever you choose to call God, because you know God doesn't care. It's not some guy up there that looks like Moses getting pissed off because you called it the wrong name. Okay, let's face it. Okay? But I digress. Okay. God is all there is. Say that with me. God is all there is. That means that everything comes from that source. Everything is an expression of that life. Everything is part of the wholeness of the universe. It is integrity. It is integritas. I'm not sure that's a word, but it should be. Now this might be hard to understand because you know what? There's so much variety in the world. It's hard to believe that at the root level it's all the same. I mean, it looks like there's separation and there's individuality. How is it that we come from the same place or from the same thing? And from a human standpoint, yeah, you know, it's hard. Our world of effect, things seem separate and distinct. Look around the room. I mean, I don't know how many, 100 and so of you right here. And each one of you is different. You're individual. You got different thoughts. You're either like, wow, she's cool, or oh my God, what is that woman talking about her? I can't believe she said pissed off. Okay, so it's all going on in the room here. In our teaching, we celebrate that. We celebrate individuality. We honor the differences of everybody. We love variety. It's the spice of life. And yet, from a metaphysical standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, we understand that underneath all of that, we are one. We are part of the same source. We are one with it and each other. Ernest Holmes put it this way. The physical man is in unity with all other physical elements of the universe, and in unity with the invisible source from which they came. There is one universal substance whose business it is to take form in multiplicity. We are God's business. We are God's expression. And you know what? Science is bearing this out. We've talked about this before with the discovery of quantum physics. I'm no expert, but what I understand is that they've discovered that underneath everything we see and experience is the same substance, the same stuff, way down deep. So what that tells us is that at the core, the integrity, we are all one. Go like this. So nice, right? Good lesson. What does that mean to us on our spiritual path? How does knowing this help us live our life more meaningfully? Ernest Holmes says we spend too much time in theory and not enough in practice. So what does it really mean? Well, first of all, we understand that living a life of integrity means trusting ourselves and our own concept of what is right or wrong, not what somebody else tells us. And we're teaching an Emerson class here pretty soon, and Emerson said, nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. You listen to what you know is right and honest and true, not what other people are telling you. Because when we really listen to that inner voice, we know what's right for us. We can trust that. Second, we understand that the integrity of the universe is expressing in our individual lives. We can rely on that structural foundation. So that when a time of adjustment happens, and it will, we understand and know that it is happening for us ultimately. It is happening for our ultimate good in the face of things. We understand that these changes, sometimes really devastating at the time, are providing us the opportunity to let go of what no longer belongs, and yet be able to build on a solid and strong foundation, a foundation that is strongly supporting us in this journey of life. And finally, we trust the integrity of the whole, understanding that we are part of the one life, of the one I am, so that even if we're feeling alone or separated or disconnected, there is no way that we can be. There is no way that we can be disconnected, truly disconnected from what we are. Which means we can't be disconnected from one another, because we are part of one another. And there could be no more solid foundation than that. In my former center in California, we didn't have an Amy Bishop. So I would open each service by singing a song called We Are One. And so I'm going to sing it for you now because it seems like a nice way to end the service. If you know it, please sing along with me. We are one.